Wow, I could sit here and pick your brain all day, but I feel selfish. Do we have some questions from the audience for Simon?
Ask the nasty, cynical ones, because, you know, it is...
Come on, someone be bold. No questions?
I will share one with you. Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry.
Hey there. I find it kind of interesting whereby you mentioned a lot about CSR, especially when you're talking about how it's an intimate global workplace and marketplace. Considering how a lot of brands are limiting themselves towards just several different social media channels in terms of, you know, just having a generic international, you know, Energizer channel and whatnot.
Right.
When you're looking at all these cultural nuances in terms of, you know, free trade, fair trade, and, you know, all the different perceptions of what is perceived locally as what might be offensive or not.
Right.
How do you think brands might be able to try to address this? Because, you know, there's obviously there's absolutely no easy answer for this, you know.
Yeah, you can't generalize. There's not one brush for everything. I completely understand. So your question would be, how do you balance cultural or local culture with the global reach of brands through these tools and so on? Would that be fair?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge. Probably the best answer is to look at the examples out there. If you look at Coke, they realized that they needed to work with local communities if they wanted to get a bottle of Coke in the hands of everybody in the world. So they work with local vendors, particularly, you know, in the developing world, who then will transport the bottles of Coke on bicycles or carry them into far-reaching places that they can't do themselves. So I use that as a metaphor for being very specific to the region that you're working in. But at the same time, you can be very general, because there are certain core human values that are universal. And I'll give you an example. Coke, red. Pepsi, blue. Coke, happiness. Pepsi, refreshment. Coke, constant state of being, happiness. Pepsi, refreshment, change. Red, blue, constant, change, happiness, refreshment. Fundamental, simple propositions that are universal in nature, that have legs. You know, in advertising game, you say it's got legs because refreshment in India, or refreshment in Sweden, or refreshment in Saudi Arabia mean many different things, but it still equally applies. When you look at the launch of the Prius, and I had the good fortune to work with the great team at Saatchi & Saatchi in Torrance with this, we could have talked about the 52 mile per gallon you know, efficiency. We could have talked about the solar sunroof. But instead, we wanted to own something fundamental that is human. So we wrote this campaign called Harmony Between Man, Nature and Machine. Why? Because if you own the idea of harmony, you force out your competition, because it's a category-owning proposition. Why? Because the hybrid category is car balance with environment. Harmony between the two. So when the Honda Insight was coming out 3 weeks earlier than the third generation Prius, the Honda Insight couldn't talk about harmony in any context without butting up against with Toyota's positioning. But what Toyota wanted to own was a human quality called harmony. So if you look at Coke with happiness, if you look at Pepsi with refreshment, if you look at Toyota with harmony, you know, if you look at Smarter Planet, if you look at all these big brands, the way they straddle global reach and local culture is to define themselves in terms of something emotional and universal, and then bring that to life in specific ways in the local culture.
Any other questions? Oh, great.
Yeah, hi. I love the reference to brand karma, and I'm wondering, in terms of the consumer market, how many people are either aware of that, or if it's low, which I'm kind of guessing, and there's a great opportunity to raise awareness of that and make that part of the choice that you referred to earlier.
I think awareness has a long way to go, in that there's a necessary evil in this, in that when you have people creating metrics or sort of indices around brand performance, you're setting yourselves up to be critical of the brands who you need to support the platform, in a sense. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like you need to be on the right side of the equation to support it. And by and large, most brands aren't. So it doesn't really have the industry falling all over itself to help. At the same time, consumers are just becoming more sophisticated in terms of their use of these tools. And these tools themselves are just becoming simple enough, because no one's going to really be a mindful shopper unless they can make it's so easy, it's thoughtless for them. They can just go, boom, well, that's good. I'll buy everything that's over an 8 or a 7 on my ranking. Boom, that's no good. I'll take the other yogurt, or I'll do this, or I'll take whatever. So I think it has a long way to go, and I think the success of these new tools will be driven by the assumption of responsibility of consumers. So the Achilles heel of We First is that if we don't care, if every one of us in this room doesn't care about what we buy and who we buy from, nothing's going to change. No amount of brand karma, no amount of social vest, no amount of cause cast, social vibe, swipe good, none of these will make any difference, because they turn on the consumer being engaged with this issue. And my hope and my expectation is they will increasingly over time, because they're becoming so sophisticated in their use of these tools, because reports like Edelman and Cohn suggest that 60 to 70% at a minimum of consumers want that. And thirdly, consumers are so aware now, thanks to the internet and the shareability of social media, that we're in trouble, that they're sitting there going, hold it, I'm a parent, or I'm a young kid who wants to have a future. And over here, we know the government has historic debt. Everyone's telling us that. We're absolutely riddled with debt. That's all we hear about in the news all day. Over here, we see non-profits struggling with less resources and not really sufficiently meeting the challenges we face despite their best efforts. So how are we going to get help? Because I keep hearing this bad news all the time. Oh, well, then I want my brand to do something. And you go, well, the brand's not changing. And then the onus falls back on you to say, well, actually, I want you to change. And the only leverage you have is the dollars in your pocket. And the only reason you can use that now is because there's tools which allow you to amplify your message. But if we do not care, we will become a country polarized even further by a disparity of wealth. We will become less affluent and therefore in some ways less influential around the world as there's other rising superpowers come through and more skilled labor's off overseas. We will have basically served our self-interest so much so that we will have written ourselves out of the prosperity equation, and we will be playing second fiddle to other countries around the world, and we will have neglected so many people in this country that are suffering in such real terms right now, all to just make a very small minority very, very wealthy. And I'd put it this way. Martin Luther King, he said in August of '63, he characterized the African American community by saying, it is an island of poverty in an ocean of material prosperity. And right now, 50 years later, 50 years of progress later, the same metaphor is true but in reverse. We are now an island of extraordinary wealth, fortifying ourselves against the widening ocean of abject poverty. If you think about our world right now, we are a shrinking island of wealth with poverty everywhere. Are we going to let this continue? Is that good business? Will that ensure our future as a CEO? I don't think so. And will it endear ourselves to our customer base? No, I don't think so. So I think things are going to change for all those reasons. They have to, otherwise we will become a casualty of our own me-first mentality.
How are we doing on time, Epi? We're good?
We're over.
Okay. So Simon's, you're going to be signing books here, right?
I have. I just gave myself RSI outside.
Yes. And Epi, do you want to tell us about the party tonight for the book launch? La Pomme? Okay, yeah. That's what I thought. And I don't remember the address for La Pomme off the top of my head.
It's at 26th Street between 6th and Broadway.
On 26th between
26th,
6th and Broadway, La Pomme.
People got the invitations, yeah. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right, great. And so
Awesome.
Anybody is welcome to come, right, to the party?
Well, it's kind of like by invitation.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
I don't want to
bad.
be rude,
My
but
bad.
we kind of like have a limit
You
of
all must
100
be
people.
killed.
So
None of you are allowed
we'll
to
guarantee
come.
100 people will get
Okay,
in for
shh,
sure.
Don't tweet that. Okay, great. Thank you so much. If the book is half as good as you are in person, I'm sure it'll be a fantastic read. I'm excited.
And thank you for everyone's support
have
for
it.
the book. Please do share it with people. I would just say one thing. This book was done as a tool for everybody to help facilitate the change I believe we need to see in the world. As a dad, as a father, as a man, as an ad guy. We need to make this change, so please give it to the boss who needs to hear it. Give it to the young entrepreneur that's just come out of grad school that wants to make a difference in business. Allow them to get their head around the new context for the business marketplace. This is a working tool, so you don't have to go through and have all these discussions and never actually get to the change that you want to see in the world. So please use it as a tool. I so thank you for your support. It is a platform to celebrate everybody's efforts, and thank you for your interest.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys.